Can I ask maybe it's a clarifying question? I want to come back to what you're talking about, where you're feeling like these people, like these Black dancers from out of town, are coming in and being put on a pedestal. Do you have any like feeling as to like why that is, and like what, like if there's a very clear step that you're seeing that like this needs to change this way?
Well, first of all, I want to say like everybody's really talented and deserves to work and deserves to be praised and deserves to
Yes.
be like,
Oh, yes, yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah,
I
yeah.
agree.
I yes, yes, like everyone deserves all the accolades. Like, like whether I am your friend or I don't get along with you or neutral, whether you don't like me, whatever, like I respect everybody, you know, especially the Black dancers. Um, I don't if I'm being put on a pedestal above people that are actually from here, I have a problem with that. Because that's not something that I'm necessarily consenting to. If I'm being you, if I and the other Black dancers that are not from here who are being put on a pedestal, if that's being used as an excuse to not like go out and like get more from this community, I don't like that. Um, and I do think that it's sort of like a little bit of a Pied Piper situation where like if people see a Black face, maybe more Black kids will come to our thing, and that's a good thing, right? You want more, maybe to attract more diversity. It doesn't always happen. It happens with something that I will say that like with something like an institution that's been like really good about that, I think, in terms of the diversity of styles that will attract and like the faces that they put out there as instructors and choreographers, like STG's Dance This, very diverse show, does like really good job with that. And I've been in spaces where it's like, yes, the teachers are diverse, but I think that when you're talking about getting new Black families at these studios, sometimes even if you have like a Black teacher, if you see that like the founder or the studio runner is white and then like most of the staff is white, that still like reads a certain way too. And like, you know, people don't always know from the outside how authentic the representation is. And a lot of people, it's the history of hurt, right? There's a lot of people who are skeptical for a reason. Um, there are people who are going to be like, I see that this studio has a Black teacher and like there's someone my kids can relate to, da da da. And then there's gonna be people who are like, oh, that's just their Black teacher that they have there to like get me to go there. Like you're gonna have those two reactions, right? And that's the thing. As somebody who grew up around, I'm from a Black family, grew up around Black community. Black people are used to being pandered to. We know when we see it. Um, like in commercials, everything, capitalism, everything. Like I remember being a kid and noticing straight up there was this moment in time where all of like the McDonald's commercials just started featuring only Black people. Ba da ba ba ba, I'm loving it. But like suddenly it was just Black people all the time in all the commercials because fast food, right? The equating with like lower income, and then you get into like the race thing. It's like in America, it's something that was definitely like, and I called it out. I was like, I'm being pandered to. Like, and like people can tell they're being pandered to. Um, I definitely, I want to reiterate that like, I don't just want to be picked for things because I'm Black or that like, even just like, you know, putting like a beautiful Black dancer on the cover. Like I actually kind of love it. Like ever since 2020. I mean, it could be better. It could be way better. There could be a lot more follow through. But aesthetically, like image wise, it was like the blackening where you ever where everyone just like had this like reaction to what happened in 20. I mean, it's like it's traumatic and silly at the same time. It's like another black man got killed. So let's give you flesh tone tights now. Like like I'm laughing, but it's like it's the emotional whiplash talking. It's like the it's like the thing we've been asking for forever, and now just because someone died, now you're gonna be like, let's have a conversation about tights and shoes. um, and let's just start putting black people at the center of everything. And I've been noticing it all over. Like, I remember like being a guest, like I was with Khambatta and we were get with another company. They're a ballet company that's predominantly white. It's like black girl is in the center to show we have a black girl. Like that might not be the intention, but like it's just a conscious thing. Like everyone's trying to be like, we love black people. It's like it's literally like the book of Exodus. It's like it no, like literally like it is like we're putting the blood on the door so that God passes over us and doesn't kill our firstborn and accuse us of being racist. It really is that. It really kind of is that. If you didn't have that black square on your Instagram,
You're like hitting it home for me with the Bible reference. I was like, oh no.
just like you will be smited. Like, but it's like it's great to see all these black and brown people like front and center on all these things all of a sudden. But then it's like I want there to be some protection for people and to just treat people like human beings and not objects for an agenda. Because, and I'm gonna get into politics just a little bit, because dance is political and everything. We're all, you know, I think that there is something happening in our politics where a lot of queer people, black people, women, you know, I think there's this assumption that everybody that has those identities or any intersection of them, person of color, are always going to be liberal. And there's a lot of mistrust and people are crossing over to the other side. It's like I like it, and you have to kind of look at that. And this is Seattle because we're talking about Seattle dance within the Seattle area, and then we have Washington, which is very red, and then you have like Seattle that's like very blue, but it's like um and I think it matters. I think it affects how people are treated in certain spaces. I think like whether it's this like to me, bias is really just kind of like the disproportionate overreaction to a person being in a space. It's not always like bias isn't always like the I'm gonna call you the N-word kind of bias. Bias is also the like your energy is really, really weird around me because you're tiptoeing around my blackness for no reason. Like, like when you feel that like nervous energy, like, am I coming across as a good white liberal? Like, that's also bias. And like, and that is what happens a lot in these spaces for me. So it's like everyone just breathe. Like at the end of the day, we're all just flesh humans, right? And the way that we get to more equity is just it's not by doing more, it's actually kind of by doing less sometimes and being like, you person, I person, um, Homo sapien. Um, like we don't always have to heighten it And I think like, I came from a, Spectrum Dance Theater, a dance company where like a lot of the issues are heightened to be able to see them. We're gonna make a whole big nightmare piece about lynching and then modern day lynching and like hate crimes, and we're gonna put it at like this most elevated level on a concert dance stage so that you see the issue. And that's one way of doing it. That is one way of doing it. We could also scale it down because sometimes things become clearer when you just like quiet it down just a little bit and they become a little simpler. And, you know, there's been so much of this heightened like drama around my identity, my whole life, my whole upbringing. And the way I find ease in it is by being like, let's bring it down to like, you know, I'm an African American, which is a which is already inherently a multiracial identity. It's a forced one. It's, slavery, ethnogenesis, the creation of the ethnicity African American. Um, we are descended from people who were, you know, forced to have the children of their slave master. And a lot of the slaves, like most of them probably were mulatto. And, so when I look at a white person, I'm like, especially if you're from the South, ironically, right? I know, right? Especially if you're from the South, you most likely have the same slave ancestors I do. Like, it's just like we like the American identity is a biracial one. And then initially, it's initially biracial, and then you go further down history, 20th century, it becomes very multiracial. And so, like, there is no purity. As much as you try to give the illusion, like, we already are mixed. Acknowledging it is the first step. So you might as then it becomes easier to just integrate. Like, once you acknowledge that, like, what you're doing is not separate. It's actually like if you grew up as an American, if you're a Seattleite and like you like, but even if you're not American, a lot of that music goes global. Like, the world is already in Seattle. You don't even have to travel outside of it. The world is here. You know, once you acknowledge that it's already here, it doesn't become, in my mind, it doesn't become so scary to talk to someone who's an immigrant or going to a community where it's like, oh, I'm a straight person. I'm going into this queer space. I'm like, but think about all the things that you love that were already influenced by queer people. It's like you have a right to be there too. Like, and like there's so much like innovation, collaboration that has happened to create what we have now. Um, and so I think that acknowledging that in our work, in our dance work, without making excuses and without scapegoating and without acting like it's a big deal to not like I believe like in yes, Black excellence is amazing, but I just view it as excellence. Like, of course, of course that, you know, you look at like African cultures, like African innovation, like of course there's excellence. Why would there not be? I almost want like that excellence, the fact that it exists to be mediocre, or like, not that I want mediocrity, I want like the excellence to be normalized or be seen as normal, which means don't make a big deal out of it and just have it as is. And like, move forward with it. Um, I think it's so interesting how we're still clinging on to the nostalgia of who was here 5 or 6 years ago. Um, Shout out to Danny Terrell. I love Danny Terrell. Danny has done so much for this community. And people will still be like, we have Danny Terrell, and Danny's all over the world, back and forth the coast. It's like trying to claim people as being part of the identity of the fabric of your world because it looks good. But did you actually do everything that you could do to support that person? Because we just celebrated on Valentine's Day the 4th anniversary of our 2020 show at the Moore for Black boys, and we had one night only. And all these Black companies that come through here, they come at the Moore Theater. It's like it's always one night only at the Moore. And I'm saying, can we get more shows at the Moore? More Black shows? Signed Robbi Agatha Moore? you know, like like in that regard, do more. Like have more shows. Like literally the number of shows. Like if you want to do more in any way, pay people more. Because if you want, you can't like celebrate people and then like not book them enough or pay them enough for them to be able to like stay. Or like, like it's the hooray, we have that person, but you need to invest so that they stay and not mistreat people and act a fool and like just treat someone like a person. Like I've had so many, I mean, I've been transparent on my own page about a lot of things that happen that don't pertain like particularly to race, but like I think I can read between the lines of a lot of things of interactions that I've had. And there's this, I feel on both sides, white people and Black people here, there's this desperation for representation. And it's like, but if you're desperate for the representation, the desperation for the representation should not outweigh the deeper goal of like making Black and brown dancers and just humans in general and all these other identities that intersect with it safer and secure here, and not just stopping at the desperation of like representation, but like there's a whole world once you get past it. Like there's a whole deeper world, um because Black people, like, that's a wide range of people. We're all culturally different. Like, me talking to someone from I was in a Lyft or an Uber once, and there are a lot of Ethiopian people here, and the Uber driver was Ethiopian and thought I was Ethiopian. I was like, me talking to an Ethiopian person, like, there are things I don't know about their culture that I don't know any more than like someone who's white. Like, as I said, like I grew up in America. It's like initially like a well, it's actually a triracial culture because you have the indigenous people that are here, and then you have like the Europeans and the Africans. You have that's the basis of America, the erasure of the Native Americans, the importing of the Africans. You had the Europeans fleeing religious persecution, and so they were disenfranchised, and then they disenfranchised other people. and then everybody else came over here. Um, so it's just like there's always been representation if you seek it out. Like you can choose to go see it somewhere. Like it doesn't always have to be imported. You can be the one that goes to just see it for yourself. Um, and we have, you know, if you have the privilege of being mobile, if you have a car and you can drive or you can take the bus or like you can go. It's about where people choose to go. It's not always about bringing Black people to you. It's also like, do you don't necessarily always need an invitation to go to things. The same way everybody just shows up to the ballet uninvited. You can show up to all these other things. You don't, you don't need an invitation. Unless it's designated like, oh, okay, like for example, Langston Hughes has a mixer where it's like, okay, Black artists come here to network, no spectators, this is specifically, but most of the time, like, you're invited, everyone's invited, like, just show up. It's so simple.
I could listen to you talk about this for so long. I like, thank you so much. It's always so, I always learn a lot when I get the opportunity to listen to you. So I appreciate